Okay.
There, I can see now. I will share my screen with you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, brother. Blah, blah. I will share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Fredo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I see you. I see your screen.
Great.
It worked. Hooray.
It's great.
Yep.
But I don't know if there is an the other companion are not here because I invite them several times, but I can see them.
It looks like Hiram is in somewhere.
Professor sent us email about Darren, so he said that
Okay.
he will not be with us couple weeks.
So,
But
sorry, he dropped the
Hiram,
class.
no, Professor wrote that he has some problems, and we need to pray for him and for his family.
Okay.
Yep.
So
But
Hiram,
Hiram, he is a teacher today.
yeah. So I think Hiram is in one of the groups, but he's not in this one.
Oh, really?
Maybe it's the same one, but I see his name there.
What is the email?
Hiram's is. I'm not sure. I just see the H in our group chat, so I think he's looking to get in. It's hiramgomez@gmail.com. There you go.
HiramGomez@gmail.com.
I just sent him a text asking if he had seen the invite, and he hasn't looked at it, so maybe he's in? I don't know. I guess I could start doing my presentation, and then hopefully he will come
Okay.
in the next 15 minutes.
Good idea.
All right, I will show you my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. I can
Okay,
see
now
yours.
can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'm talking about JSON notation today. And JSON is a JavaScript data storage format that can be used to exchange information between web services. It puts the file into a string, so it's very lightweight, and so it doesn't take a lot of data to send back and forth. The object is formatted in a string with key value pairs, and the properties are in double quotes. Values can include strings, numbers, booleans, nulls, arrays, and objects, but methods are not allowed. So here is an example of a JSON string. If you notice that the entire object is within a string, inside quotes, and then each of the keys are in double quotes. Strings are in double quotes, but booleans and numbers and arrays are not, but the strings inside the array are in double quotes. If you guys have questions, go ahead and... Is everybody good so far?
Okay. Yeah.
Does
We're
anybody
good.
have questions? All right, so the JSON stringify method will take a JavaScript object or array and turn it into a JSON string. And if there's a method within the object, it will just leave it out. And so to stringify an object, you use JSON.stringify, and then you put the name of the object within the parentheses. So here's an example. Here is an object, pizza, and then I use the JSON stringify with pizza in the parentheses, and this is the output. So again, it's a string, and all of the keys are in double quotes. And then notice there was a function within the object, but that function is now gone because methods and functions are not allowed. So it just skips over them and ignores them. JSON parse is the opposite of stringify. Basically, it takes a JSON string and turns it back into whatever it was before. So if it was just a string, it will turn it back into a string. If it was an object, it will turn it back to an object, and the same with an array. But it doesn't put back in the method that was gone. And the syntax is json.parse, and then you put the name of the object in the parentheses. Here's an example of that. We have a JSON string here, and if I use JSON parse, then it will turn it back into an object. And then there is one optional parameter that you can use with the JSON parse, and it's called the reviver parameter. And what it does is it adds a function onto your parse. And so as it parses the string, it inspects each element before it parses it. If it's null or undefined, it will delete it. And then it will run the function on each of the other elements. And the way that... Sorry, Hiram is trying to get in. I don't know if you want to see if you can figure that out in the background. Should I keep going, or should I stop and wait and see if we can get Hiram?
Maybe let's wait couple seconds.
Oh yeah,
Here's
here.
What is happening?
Are you here, Hiram?
Yeah, there are like 5 different chats open. I couldn't find the right one.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Oh, good.
So I've been doing my presentation, but it's really short. I can start over, or I can just keep going. What do you guys think? I'm almost done.
maybe start over for Hiram
Okay,
if you want.
that's fine. I can do that. The JSON parse and stringify is actually pretty simple, and so there wasn't a lot to teach. But JSON notation is a JavaScript data format, and it's used to exchange information between web services. The objects are formatted as strings, which makes them very lightweight, so it doesn't take a lot of data to send them back and forth. And there's always key value pairs within a JSON string. The keys are always in double quotes, and then the values can be strings, numbers, booleans, nulls, arrays, or objects. Methods or functions are not allowed in a JSON string, so if you have one in your object, it will just be skipped over. So here's an example of a JSON string. Notice it is inside quotes, so it's a string. The keys are in double quotes. The strings are in double quotes. You cannot use single quotes inside the JSON string. And then nulls and numbers and arrays are not in the double quotes. So to get an object or an array into JSON format, you use the JSON stringify method, and this is the syntax here, JSON.stringify, and then the object that you are stringifying, I don't know if that's a word, inside the parentheses. Here is an example. Here is an object that I want to stringify, so I put the variable that it's stored in inside the parentheses in the JSON stringify, and it turns it into a JSON string. Notice there was a method in this object, and it is gone. It does not transfer over. JSON parse is the opposite of stringify. It changes a JSON string back into its original format. If it was an object, it will become an object again. If it was an array, it will become an array. And this is the syntax, JSON.parse, and then the name of the object in the parentheses. And here's an example. Here I have a JSON string, and I put it in the JSON parse milkshake, and then it comes out as an object. And then there is one optional parameter that you can use on the JSON parse, and it is called the reviver parameter. And basically it's a function that you create that you want to have happen to each of the elements within your array. So it inspects each element before it parses it, and if it's null or undefined, it will delete those elements, and then it runs the function on all of the other elements. And here is the syntax. You do JSON.parse, and then you have the name of the object, and after that you have function. You put your parameter for your function, and then the actual function block, what you want to have happen, and that all goes inside the parentheses of the JSON parse. Let me show you an example of that. So here I have a JSON string that has the numbers 1 through 5, and then I'm going to parse it at JSON parse, and then the name of the object, and then the function, and my parameters are the key and the value. And then if the key is between, well, greater than 0 and less than 6, then the return value is going to be multiplied by 5. Or else, if it's not between 0 and 6, then it will just return the normal value. So here's the results. Notice that each of those values have been multiplied by 5. Now, it's important to have the return statement, the else statement, sorry. It's important to have the else statement, because if you don't have that, what it does is it goes through and it parses each one of the elements within the string, and then it parses the entire string as a whole, And so that last time, if you don't have that else, then it will return as undefined because the whole string cannot be multiplied by 5. And so it messes up. So you always have to have an else for what you don't want to have happen. And that's it. JSON parse a JSON stringify.
Tammy, for this last example, if we have condition key less than 5, so for 5 element, it returns 5. Is it correct?
Right. So if the key is greater than 0 or less than 5, if I had a key that was, say, 6, then it would just return the number. So let's say I added 6 on here, it would be 6, 6 would be the last one, because it would fall under the else statement.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Could you go back 2 slides?
Yep.
So, in your milkshake toppings, is that an object? Is that why you have brackets there?
Toppings is an array. So I could have put an object if I had wanted to, but in an object it would have had key value pairs within here, and it would have the curly brackets. But because it has the square brackets and no keys, it's an array.
Right. Okay, gotcha.
You're welcome. Okay. Anything else? All right, then I think Hiram's topic is much bigger than mine. So Hiram, go ahead.
Okay. That one? Yeah, that's the button. Application. Here we go. You guys see anything?
Yes.
Okay. So for my topic, which is XML HTTP requests, you need to know what AJAX is. That's how we're going to use it. So it's an asynchronous JavaScript and XML. It was just another language like HTML, JavaScript, and the like. So it's not a programming language, and it's a combination of the built-in XML HTTP request object, and then you use JavaScript in the HTML DOM in order to display the data that you have. Oh, let me put some presentation view. No. No, that's not what I wanted. This one? Why is it doing that? Slideshow? I'll just do it this way. This is bigger. I can't figure it out. Okay.
I can see it fine.
Okay. So there's a lot that goes on. So what happens is an event needs to happen. You need to either click a button, or when you click a button, certain functions occur. Bottom line is you need to trigger this request. And then you use JavaScript in order to write all of this, in order to create this object and to work with it and do whatever you need to do in order to do the job that is needed. And so what's going to happen is you're going to make a request, send the request to a web server. That server will process it and give back a response after it is done. And I'll go over the responses and what those are a little bit later. And then you can read that response through JavaScript and then take appropriate action by putting it back into your HTML or use JavaScript to do some live, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like live animations, like happening on the spot once it finishes, rather than reloading a new web page like PHP does. All that reminds us. So that's why this is very important, because whereas PHP, you end up creating a new page, a new web page, where here with this Ajax and XML request, you can update the page that you were on without leaving it. And so what I said here is the bread and butter. It's the important, it's the backbone, the cornerstone or keystone of the XML object is the XML object. So most browsers, they will support this. And then what I said before, it's used to pass data back and forth to a server in order to receive and send what you need to do, whatever you needed to do. So here is the syntax to create one. Is you create a variable. Now let me make this more. Yeah. So it's the variable name. You don't need var in front of it or anything like that. Just the name of the variable that you want. So for example, you can make this JSON request. You can call it that, and then you'll use it later on in the code. Where I have some example in brackets, I'll show later on. Then you create new, and then the object of XML HTTP request. So in here, so this creates a new object. This will abort the request that you made. And the important parts are these are two of the important parts of the whole process, is using open and send. The other one I have in my code that I'll show. So this open will specify what you are doing. The method, it shows you're going to use either get or post. And get you usually use when there's no sensitive information, just information like passwords or social security numbers, driver's license. If you're using either of those, then you have to use a post, because then it won't show any of the data on the web page if you go to view source and stuff. And the URL you will use to is the place where you want to go, or the server that you want to access. And specifically, if you have a file that you want to access on a particular server, you have to have the URL, the path of it to get there. And then async is short for asynchronous. There's true and false values. True means you'll make it asynchronous, which means that the request will happen in the background and you can continue working on the web page. So if you're filling out a form and you are asking, like you want autofill names based on some directory, like at the school, for example, where if you're creating an email in Outlook, if you start typing out a name, it'll start throwing suggestions at you. And that's what they're using. They're using a true value and the open method, which is asynchronous, which allows the user to keep typing while that thing is continuously being updated and data is being sent back to you. You can keep working. Whereas synchronous, where the value is false, you have to wait for the request to be finished before you can do anything else on the web page. So you usually, like 90% of the time, will want to use asynchronous depending on what you are doing. And then the user and password are optional depending on the server and if they require some special credentials in order to access certain files. And then send is as simple as what you do to send the request to the server. You use for get requests, and then you use this for post requests. And then, so there's properties to the XML HTTP request objects, and these are on ready state change, ready state, response text, response XML, status and status text. On ready state change, you use this for callback function, which I'll show in a second. And for that, you'll end up using ready state with it as well. And so you have these 5 numbers you'll get back. And how you know what state you're in is if you will have some kind of debug code to let you know. You'll have an alert, alert parentheses, the JavaScript alert. And you'll alert what's the ready state change, so you can know where you are in this process. So 0, it was never initialized. 1, server connection established. 2, the request was received. The 3, processing request. And 4, it finished the request and the response is ready. And the response text in XML you use for when it's ready. So after you send the request and the server finished doing what it needs to do, it has a response ready for you. So you need to receive that response. And you can do that by returning it as a JSON string or as XML data. And then here is a status of the connection to the server. So you got a 200, 403, 404, and there are a bunch of others. But what you want to see is a 200, meaning that everything went according to plan as far as it went well. And then the status just shows, instead of showing a code like we do here, it'll show the word rather than the code. Instead of showing 200, it'll show OK. Instead of showing 404, it will show not found, etc. Now let me change the window. Yes, here. I want to change it. I want to change it. Oh, there we go. Is that brackets? No, it's not brackets. Oh. On my second screen. Okay. Able to see my brackets window?
Mm-hmm. Can you zoom in a little bit on it?
I wonder how I can make it bigger. And move this over back then. Where is it? Where is it here? No, it's not popping up for some reason. Okay. Let's see, right here. Can I make it bigger?
It's fine. I can see it.
Ah.
Oh,
That better?
fine. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So it's in JavaScript under script tag. So this is the variable I created in order to use for the object here on line 14. So I set it to false so that I know that if for whatever reason this failed, it would get caught down here and it'll tell me that it just simply did not work. That browser does not support it. And so here is just variables I created to store values from what the input I have on my table here. And then here, I'm creating a string. I'm using PHP to send the request. Or, no, wait a minute. Yeah, so I'm, okay, that's what I did. So I have the URL down here. And then in order for this program to do its job, it needs a start city, start state, end city, and an end state, which is why I created these variables up here. So I can add them onto the URL string so that I can properly go to the right web server in order for me to run that program in the specific order that it wants. And so here I'm doing a check. If for whatever reason the XML request did not work, then it means that the browser does not support it. And then I return and then go back to the web page. Anything else? This is the bulk of the request. And so what you'll do is the onReady state change is anytime it goes through a step, it'll call this function, which is called a callback function, which is for this function here. And the only time it does anything is when the ready state is 4, meaning that the request finished processing and it's ready to be received, the data, and the status is 200, meaning that everything went okay, that the server was found, everything was brought back to normal. And so, and then here I'm opening the request. I'm using a get, sending the URL, and I'm doing it asynchronously, so I can keep working on the form if I need to, or if I want to, or anything else on the page. And then I send the request. So once everything is good to go on the server side, I create a new object, and I do a JSON parse on the JSON request or the HTTP request that I made. And I access that using the response text. If you remember on the PowerPoint, response text is what holds the data that the server is ready to give back. So with that data, I'm asking it to parse it with the JSON.parse that Tammy showed us. And then, just for simplicity's sake, I just made a table out of this. And I'm accessing now my object, all the different information that's inside of it. So there's a trip, and then there's different so trip is the object inside of there, and I'm accessing the different keys and values inside of it and adding it onto my list so I can finish off my table. And then in here, I'm adding it onto my HTML part of the code. So here's the list that I've been adding onto from the response.txt through the object that I created. And then I'm adding it onto, where's Miles? Here. I'm adding the table into this div tag. And that's pretty much it. It just all depends on what the web server is and what it's going to give back, depending on is what will determine what you need to do in order to access everything properly. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, not concerning your presentation, but did you read the first very long message from professor?
Which message?
This is long in the beginning of the course. He maybe not. So he wrote about this topic. That this is he considers it the most difficult from all topics we have.
I agree.
And he said the rubric and other parts of the course are misleading, and most people think they just need to use Ajax to read the content of a file. That is not the requirement. The requirement is for you to call a third-party web service API. So yeah.
I did.
So can you show us who you contacted and what the data is that you got back?
So this is the web service that I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it is right here.
And what does that API give you?
So you give it a start state, start city and a start state, and an end city and an end state. And it will give you how many miles there are in between those two cities and the different modes of transportation. There's, let me try to remember. I wrote this a lot. It was bike, walking, airplane, and then I think that was it. It was car, bike, airplane, or train was another one as well. It all depends. And this program, this API, this person programmed it in a way that they would know if it was too far to walk, too far to do a train, too far to do a car. So it'll just show specific certain things. That's what they did.
Okay.
Can you show us the results that you got back? Do you have
I have to tunnel in to be able to use it.
Sorry, say that again.
I have to tunnel.
Okay.
But give me a second. I can't remember the command.
Do you have it on your website yet, or your GitHub page?
Not yet. Okay. Now, let's go to the internet. Oh. I can't show you.
So I found one on the internet that was good that I could show you if you wanted to see.
Okay, I lost my permission because I did this during school and I used their servers to do it.
Got it. Do you guys want to see one? Have you studied this yet? Okay, hold on, let me find one. I shared it on the web page for Ajax, but I'll go really quick and grab it. Let me share my screen. Can you see this? Or is it too small?
I can see it.
Okay, so basically, they did the new XML HTTP, I can't say it, the request, and then they did the open. They basically don't have this as asynchronous, they just did it synchronous. So they did the open, they did get method. Here is the URL of where they're going to, and it has a lot of different things in it to get the specific data that they want. And then it's false because it's asynchronous. And then they send the request, and they parse the response text, and then they're just writing out the data that they received once they get it. And so they've gotten weather information from Yahoo Weather, and Yahoo has a whole bunch of different APIs that don't require payment or any type of credentials. And so basically it just is displaying the weather for the next 3 days.
Did you write that code,
So-
or did you find it?
I found it. I can show you the one that I wrote. Hold on. There are a whole bunch on CodePen. So here is mine. Basically, if you enter a zip code, and then you enter what date you want to do. Let's do May 5th, 2018. It will tell you the sunrise and sunset times. And let me show you my code. Let's see, where does it show? It should be in the source, right? There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this actually has two. It has a synchronous and an asynchronous. So first I have a synchronous request that asks for your zip code, and then it requests from geocode.farm to find the coordinates, longitude and latitude. And it's it's synchronous because it has to return before I can send the other request. So once it gets the request and has the coordinates of longitude and latitude, then I do an asynchronous request that sends it to this API sunrise sunset. It sends the longitude and latitude and the days, and it responds back with a whole bunch of information, including the sunrise and the sunset. And so this one is asynchronous, so it has the on ready state change. And once the ready state is 4 and the status is 200, then it will go ahead and do what's inside the function. So anyway, that's a working one to show you.
Where'd you get that idea?
So I bike ride all the time, and I am always trying to decide if I've got time after work or before work if I can go for a bike ride. So this tells me the sunrise and sunset. I don't know. The weather one that I saw at the other place kind of gave me the idea, but I wanted to make it my own, so I wasn't just copying what they had done. So this was a way to use the sunrise and sunset times that came with the weather.
Thanks, Tammy.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
A very interesting topic.
Yes, it was tough to understand it for me at first. So how is everybody doing on their other topics?
Yep.
I have a question, but it doesn't do with your presentation. I didn't know how to use the tool. Have you know how to use it?
I'm having a hard time hearing you, but do you have a GitHub account?
Yes, I have, but I try to submit my work and it doesn't explain in the homepage and the internet.
So show us your GitHub. Open up
Okay.
GitHub and look at it for a second.
Okay. So for example, I try to submit one topic. I put a summary, and I press into commit to master, and I can see it on the web page.
Okay. I don't usually use this format, and so I'm more familiar with using it on the command line, but
Real quick. So are we done with the presentations? Because we should end
yes.
the broadcast so that he doesn't looking at extra stuff.
Can you end the broadcast without ending our call?
You should be able to. You can start one without being broadcasting.
Okay, I close the request then.
So Alfredo, click on that button. Detener la emisión.
Okay.